here with Mr. Ray Wyland from Tiki with Ray, both the blog and the YouTube channel, and the Tiki Goth Club. You may also know him from many articles in Exotica Modern. Welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. We were just talking on the phone for a little while about some of our other tiki takes and everything. And everyone who's listening should be pretty familiar with your work and everything you've done. But could you just go over a little bit about kind of the where are you from, where are you now, and how did you end up there? I know we've talked about it. You're up in Seattle. That was part of the reason why we wanted to have you on because I was from Seattle originally.
Yeah.
But just kind of talk about, the long road that got you up to the Northwest.
All right. Well, the long road to the Northwest started in the Northeast in Pennsylvania. I'm originally from the coal region of Pennsylvania. Kind of like there's Allentown and then there's Scranton, which is from the show The Office. And I grew up in a coal mining town, kind of like in the middle of those two. Nothing going on. I mean, it's just all these small, like the town that I grew up in is a town called Wilburton, #2, believe it or not. And they're named after coal mining shafts. So yeah, there's a Wilburton #1. I lived in Wilburton #2, 40 houses, like nothing. There's no stores. There's one street. And 15 minutes down the road, there was an actual town that actually had like a main street and stores and everything like that. It was called, and that town was called Mount Carmel. And on that main street, there was a tiki bar, and it was called the Beachcomber. And it had nothing to do with Don the Beachcomber or anything like that. It was just called the Beachcomber. And it was like it had like dark wood on the outside of it. It had like 2 tiki masts and no windows. And growing up, I always, would see that building and be like, oh man, I wonder what's going on in there. Like, I wonder what it looks like in there, And that always just kind of captured my imagination, and it planted a seed for me, growing up. About 20 minutes away, there was this amusement park. It's called Knoebels Grove, and it was a really, really cool amusement park because you didn't have to pay any admission to go into it. You could just go walk around. You can buy tickets and then go on rides.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a haunted house ride there. And I'm actually not realizing this, but I guess it's like considered like one of the best haunted house rides like in the country. Well, anyway, it's a ride where it's a dark ride where you get into it and then you ride around in this thing, and it's all your typical haunted house kind of stuff. And at the end of it, you go into this like jungle room, and it had like waterfalls. There was like a native who jumps out and scares you. There's like a tiger that comes out, and it's all like in like fluorescent lighting. And I just remember always thinking like, oh my God, this is like really, really cool, really, really cool. Again, another seed planted for me. In 2001, I did a road trip across the country with a buddy of mine, and then we ended up going to Graceland, to Elvis Presley's home.
Yeah.
And we go into the jungle room. It's not tiki, but it's like all green shag carpeting. There's like kind of like a rock wall. It might have even been like a waterfall, and it had like all this like dark wood furniture, Wicco furniture.
Yeah.
And I remember just thinking to myself like, oh my God, this is so cool. This is so awesome, And again, another seed was planted for me. In 2000,
you connect your trip to Memphis to you growing up to the seeing the Beachcomber or anything? Was there any connection to that, or was it just like,
not
oh, this
at
is
all.
a cool element?
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. These are just seeds, just kind of sitting in my head,
Yeah.
In 2006, living in Seattle, my girlfriend at the time and we went to a tiki. I saw that there was this tiki bar that popped up. It was called Hula Hula, and I don't know if it was there when you were there, but it was the one that was in Lower Queen Anne, not on Capitol Hill, because they moved actually.
Okay, I've been to the one in Capitol Hill.
Yeah. This one, there was a first one that was kind of like down. Well, there used to be Teeny Bigs. Was Teeny Bigs around when you? Was it Martini Bar?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so that might have been gone by then. Well, anyway, like there was Hula Hula was originally in Lower Queen Anne, and I remember like, hey, going to my girlfriend like, hey, we should go check that place out. Let's go check it out. It'd be like, well, that'll be fun, And we went in, and I immediately fell in love with it because it was really, really dark, and it had a lot of fluorescent lighting going on. and subconsciously, it made me realize, like, oh my God, this reminds me of the haunted house ride at Knoebels Grove.
Yeah.
Same vibe, and I'm like, oh my God, this is really, really cool. And I remember like getting drinks there, and like, you'd order, like they had like a zombie on the menu or a Mai Tai,
Yeah.
but they weren't, it wasn't like a 34 zombie or
Yeah.
44 Mai Tai. But I remember like one drink would get me wasted. So I would love going there because I was like, yeah, I'll just go get one drink and that's all I'll need. And then pretty quickly it made going to like any other bar for me obsolete, because it's like this was more than just going out to a bar and having a drink. It was like an experience.
Yeah.
The environment actually was more important to me than like the actual drinking the drink anyway. And it kind of made any going to like regular bars obsolete for me. And then that was it. We pretty much like lived at that tiki bar in 2000, and I think it was like 2007, 2008 or something like that. Trader Vic's opened up in Bellevue. In
Yeah.
Bellevue, for people that don't know, I'm in Seattle, Washington, and just like literally there's a pretty big lake called Lake Washington, and then there's another city called Bellevue, which is really kind of smaller but nicer. And they opened up they opened up a Trader Vic's there. I'm like, oh, cool. So like the Trader Vic's in Bellevue was my second tiki bar. And at the time, I was really into bicycles and riding bikes, and there was a velodrome that was over in Redmond. So we would, like, on a Friday, we'd go over and watch the velodrome races, bike races at the velodrome, and then we'd come back and hit at Trader Vic's for like a late night happy hour. It was like $4 Mai Tais.
Yeah.
And I remember I thought that was like really, really cool, and then that kind of started it for me, I I then I started to like go to, other cities. Like if I was gonna go to a city, I'd look and see if there was any tiki bars there, and then I'd want to go check them out. In 2008, I actually moved back to PA. I moved to Pittsburgh, and like Pennsylvania is kind of like it's kind of like a rectangle,
Yeah.
and you have Philadelphia kind of over here on this side, and then you have Pittsburgh on the other side, and there's kind of like not really much in the middle. And again, I kind of grew up closer to Philadelphia, and then I've been to Pittsburgh and I liked it, and I had friends that lived there. So living out in Seattle here, I was starting to get homesick. I was starting to miss my mom and dad. They're getting older, and it's like, well, maybe I should, maybe this is the time for me to move back. It rains a lot in Seattle. You're from here, you know how it goes.
Yeah.
9 months of gray and green, gloom
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And I thought, well, maybe like 4 months of like bad winter would be better. And then I moved to Pittsburgh because it was like, all right, I'm moving home, but I'm not moving home.
Yeah.
And I moved to Pittsburgh and I lived there a year, and and literally like within a couple of weeks, I realized like I made a mistake.
Yeah. Is that Arrested Development moment of like, I've made a huge mistake?
Yeah, and it was one of those. And the weird thing, this isn't tiki related, but the weird thing is like Pittsburgh kind of feels like an East Coast town, kind of like it's all like there's coal mine, there's like coal's a pretty big industry there. There's steel mills. In theory, it should have felt like home, but it never felt like home for me.
Yeah.
But anyway, when I lived there was another tiki bar there called the Tiki Lounge. And I loved it, when it was one of those things where like you can go there, you buy the drink, and then you get the mug for free. It was
Nice.
there was like cheap tiki mugs, and actually the beginning of the tiki mug collection is these cheap mugs, all from like the Tiki Lounge. So then that was like my third tiki bar. I lasted a year. I waited out my lease in Pittsburgh and then moved back to Seattle in 2009, and this has been my home ever since. Shortly after that, I have friends who live in Portland, and then they took me down to what was Thatch, and which is now Holly Paley.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the same thing, and I was blown away by that. And then also they took me to the Alibi, which is like one of the oldest tiki bars still going on. I love that. And then even back then there was a Trader Vic's that was down in Portland, and I loved that too. And then that was kind of it. Like I loved tiki bars, and I loved going to them. And that's kind of just how things were from like throughout the years, you know. And then in 2015, I was hanging out with a buddy of mine here in Seattle, and he's like, "Hey, my girlfriend got invited to go to a tiki party at this guy's. He has like a tiki bar in his basement. Do you want to go to it?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I do, absolutely, of course." So like I was a plus one of a plus one, and we
Yeah.
went to this. And it was the Monkey Skull Voodoo Lounge. This guy named was Pete, who ironically moved to Pittsburgh, but like his whole basement was a tiki bar, and
Yeah.
like and he had like bands playing, and like everyone was dressed up. You know, he had a waterfall like with a moai that blew water out of his mouth, and I'm like,
Wow.
oh, this is a thing. Oh, tiki's like a thing. Like this could be something that you could be into because I'll be honest with you, like I just went to tiki bars. I liked them. I never had any aloha shirts or anything like that. I just like
Yeah.
going to them. And I'm like, oh, this is something. February of 2016, you know, I'm looking around, like I'm always looking to see if there's any tiki bars anywhere around the Pacific Northwest because we don't really have a lot. And I saw that there was a tiki bar up in Vancouver, BC, called the Shameful Tiki Room. And I'm like, all right, well, I got to go here. I got to go check out this place. Now, at this point, like I'm single now. I've been single for a while now. And I went to Shameful Tiki Room, went to Canada. And like I was by myself. They sat me at the bar, and like I was there by myself. And I was just kind of feeling like sort of lonely, you know, because I'm like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I'm here. Here's some old bald guy sitting at the tiki bar by myself, you know. And I'm like, but I was having a good time, you know. I was like loving it.
Yeah.
I thought the Shameful Tiki Room it's still one of my favorite tiki bars. And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, I just drove up. To Canada. I just drove to another country to check out a tiki bar. And I'm like, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? And then I thought to myself, if I started a blog, then this would be like research. Then it would make it legit, you know, like,
Yeah.
oh. And then I thought like, yeah, I should do that. And then I literally like went over to my hotel room, which was in North Vancouver, and I started a WordPress account and started my blog. So
Wow.
Tiki with Ray started in 2016, February 2016. And then it changed my life
Yeah.
because
I,
because then I started to like make a point to visit. I go to other cities to check out and visit tiki bars, and then that was it, and that started a new chapter in my life. And
yeah.
here I am talking to you guys.
Yeah. Here we are. Yeah. I got to ask the
I've
question.
arrived.
Yeah. When you went to Hula Hula originally, were they doing karaoke at that point, or did that come later on?
They did, but it wasn't. But it wasn't like all the time. Like I think it was just sort of on the weekends that they would did it.
Okay.
What they did is every time that I went there, there wasn't any karaoke going on. Like back then, they were playing like surf music.
Yeah.
Like they kind of had it going on. There was actually like a book of cocktails, you know, multi pages.
Yeah.
But as time went on, like everything kind of devolved at Hula Hula, and like you know that book of tiki cocktails turned into like a pamphlet, you know, like
Yeah.
one page of like drinks. Like kind of lost the whole tiki thing. And then as I started going to like other tiki bars and actually having good tiki drinks,
Yeah.
and I go back there and it was like, this isn't very good at all. The game changer for me, like my favorite was going to Tiki Tea in Los Angeles. I had friends who lived here in Seattle. They moved to LA. They knew that I liked tiki bars, and they're like, all right, we got to take you to Tiki Tea. And we went there, and small, real small place.
Yeah.
I think my apartment's bigger than the bar.
Probably
And I'm
tiny in
and I'm like looking at the menu, and it's like I'm looking at these drinks, and like, oh, here's a drink called Ray's Mistake. I was like, well, I guess I got to get that one because it's my name. Had
there.
no idea about the history or anything about the place. Got that drink, and I'm like, oh my god, this drink is actually good. This drink is great, you know. And then like we're all trying like each other's drinks. I'm like, oh my god, these are like the best tiki drinks I've had yet.
Yeah.
Because most of the tiki drinks that you would get at most of these places weren't very, very good, you know?
You rum plus some fruit juice plus maybe something sweet.
Yeah.
And then you hit that place and that's the game changer.
Yeah, oh my God, Tiki Tea still is my favorite tiki bar. And the cool thing is, it's like the owner is still there. Ray Buin was the original owner of it, but then Mike Senior became the owner of it, and he's there, and you can talk to him, and he's really really cool. And the thing that I love about Tiki Tea is like, well, I don't know if you notice this, but like a lot of times when you go to like tiki bars, there's a lot of people there, but there's not a lot of tiki people at a
Yeah.
lot of bars. But the cool thing about Tiki Tea is like everyone there are Tiki Tea people.
Hmm.
So so here you are in a bar that loves this bar just as much as you do, and it's a real special place. It's like if I can click my heels and be anywhere, it's the Tiki Tea.
Yeah.
Still,
I love the Tiki Tea. There's a lot of charm there, and I was talk to the both the crowd who would show up, but then I was also talking, to Mike and everything, and he would always be, um, he didn't never want to take pictures with us or something. Like, I remember one time it was like we were there at closing because we couldn't get an Uber. It was like 2 in the morning or whatever, and he's talking to us, and finally it like hits 2, and he's like, "All right, get out." And we're like, "Wait, wait, can we get a picture?" And he's like, "No, get out." Wait. Yeah, okay. And he lets us take a picture. But I was gonna say, I was asking about the karaoke thing and about hula hula because there is a video out there. I might have to post it now just to embarrass
yeah,
myself. And keep in mind, this is like 2 days before New Year, so it's late December. There's a video of me singing the Monster Mash at Hula Hula in Capitol Hill, and I'm just yelling, I'm having a great time. And I didn't
yeah.
realize till after the fact. I think Ellie pointed out like, oh, that's a wedding party. They that's like somebody had just gotten married and they were not happy. So I'm like looking at all of the people we're with, and they're having a great time. Look at me singing the Monster Mash, and I see the bride just very upset, sitting in the corner, going like, "Who is this guy singing the Monster Mash in December?" So I had to
And
ask.
the answer is the coolest guy ever.
Yeah, exactly. There was. I'll post.
I don't get me wrong. I've done my share of karaokeing at Hula Hula.
Yeah.
So that's what the alcohol's for.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All the lava flows.
Yeah, the lava flows that they serve. Yeah, I mean, it hasn't changed probably.
Yeah.
Um, so let's see.
So can
So
I ask you guys a question? Are you both from Seattle originally?
no, I'm from California.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
So did
from
you
the
guys meet
northern
down in
part.
California then?
We did.
Okay.
Riley was stationed at Camp Pendleton in San Diego, and I was going to school in LA.
Okay. So
Yeah.
then you moved from California to Maryland.
We did.
Yeah.
Why did you guys move to Maryland? Because you like John Waters movies or?
Yeah, I do like John Waters. Again, another guy I haven't ran into yet, but I'd love to. He was actually at a drive-in theater down nearby our house
Yeah.
recently. No, I'm still in the military, and so
Oh,
he
okay,
said
okay.
you enjoyed San Diego too much. It's time for you to go to the Northeast and not enjoy it as much.
To Baltimore of all
Yeah,
places.
Yeah, exactly. And if we have any listeners
Like
that are,
you like crabs.
I do.
I like Alaskan crabs. People out here love their blue crabs, and if we have any
Do
Maryland
you ever
listeners,
go to
that's
Phillips Do you ever go to Phillips down in the harbor?
No.
Oh my
no.
God, it's an all you can eat. They call it a seafood festival, and we would drive down from PA to the harbor to go to this place to eat because it was like all you can eat crab.
Wow.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it was good stuff.
We're gonna add a new segment into the show is like, where is your favorite place to get crab in Maryland? And most people are gonna be like, I have no idea. So, you might have just taken the #1 spot for this for the rest of the show's running.
Yeah, yeah. Or you should start a new series called "Famous Bridges That Got Ran Into by Boats."
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Francis got key at #1, and #2 is
Baltimore.
Irrelevant.
we'll update you when that happens, maybe.
Oh yeah, please do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think sorry, what were you were about to say something?
So we heard a little bit about why you started Tiki with Ray, but how did it evolve into then a YouTube channel and it's really grown into what it is now?
Okay. So I started blogging in 2016, February 2016, and I I did that religiously. I came to the conclusion like, well, how many times should I post? And at that time, I'm like, all right, I'm going to post twice a week. So religiously, I would post 2 posts every week, maybe even sometimes more. So I put out a lot of content.
Mhm.
And then in the spring of that year, then like the following year, 2017, I was like hanging out with a friend of mine, and he's like talking, and we were drinking, and and he's like, you were talking about like doing video. And he's like, man, what do you think about like doing videos, making videos, do a show? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, man. I can't do that. I don't know. I don't have the tools. I don't have the cameras or whatever to do that. And then like and we were both drunk, and in a drunken stupor, my buddy, he has some money, and he just goes on Amazon and then like buys like a full GoPro set. And he's
Alcohol and
like, all right,
Amazon's a bad
we're gonna do it.
combo.
We're gonna do it. And then like, a couple weeks, and then like a week or two later, he gets like the camera, GoPro camera, and you're like, all right, let's do this. And I was trying to think of like an idea of like, okay, well, what's this show going to be?
Mhm.
And it's funny because I always thought like I was like clever or funny or whatever like that. And I said like, okay, well, what we'll do is we'll go to a tiki bar, and then we'll set up a camera, and we'll just record it, and then we'll just talk and bullshit, and then we'll just like save and use like the funny, like the funnier interesting parts. It wasn't even anything like tiki. It was like, hey, we're just hanging out at a tiki bar. And it's funny because there's actually a video that I did with my buddy Chris where we do exactly that, and it's like a hidden video because I don't want to do anything. And then it's like, yeah, all right, no one's gonna. Okay, I need to have a topic. It needs to be topic based.
Yeah.
And I thought like, I live here in Seattle, and as far as like having guests on, it's like, well, there's only so many guests I could really have on because I'm here. There's not a lot of people there.
Yeah.
And then I thought like, okay, so I came up with an idea of like, okay, it's going to be topic based. Okay, this episode is going to be about this topic. And then when I started doing is I started having my friends on the show. So then I thought like, okay, well, it doesn't matter who the guest is because it's like we're talking about particular topics. And I think I started making videos in 2017, and immediately I loved it. I love making videos, and I love having those conversations. And like then I started different series with it. For a long time I was just like, the show was called Tiki with Ray, and then
Mhm.
all I did was like different topics. And then I was doing a video with my friend Eric, and this guy has like a lot of tiki mugs, like a
Mhm.
lot of them. And I'm like saying like we should start a series just about your tiki mugs. And then that's how Tiki Mugs with Ray started. And
Mhm.
then okay, now I have another series. So like I have another series like, okay, well, this is about tiki mugs and stuff like that. Um and then my friend Jamie started a Facebook group called Goth Tiki, which was like the combination of creepy tiki, horror and tiki, goth and
Mhm.
tiki. And I'm like, oh man, that is a great idea. That is really, really cool. And I'm like, and I got to do something like that. I got to do something that's like goth, tiki, goth, creepy tiki, hard tiki related.
Mhm.
Because I guess, I mean, I was into like, because I was into like goth music when I in the '80s, and I was into like industrial, and I actually went out dancing like back in the early '90s. But I was also into like a lot of other types of music. But it was a subculture that I loved, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna start a series. And then I thought like, and then I came up with Tiki Golf Club because back then there was golf clubs.
Yeah.
So originally Tiki Golf Club was just a series that I did. And then I was hanging out with my friend Joel. We work out every week and stuff like that. He's a tiki guy. And then we're talking, and he's like, you should make the Tiki Golf Club like an actual club that people can join. And I'm like, all right, yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
So then I started the club where people can join, $15. You get a membership card with your own number, you get a pin, you get some stickers. And then I started doing that. And a lot of people started joining. And then I made a point like, okay, I want it to be something. I want it to be something more than just like, yeah, I just joined this club So I made a point to like put on get-togethers and stuff like that. So like up in Seattle here, I put on like my first Tiki Golf Club get-together was at the Devil's Reef. And at the
Mhm.
Devil's Reef, there's the main floor. And then
Yeah.
there's like upstairs, there's kind of like this other like hidden room. And I have a really good relationship with Jason Alexander. So I kind of like I can kind of do whatever I want up in that room. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do a Tiki Golf Club night where like I brought my own PA system. All right, we're gonna listen to golf music while we drink tiki drinks, and it was a success.
Yeah.
And then I started to do movie nights where like, all right, like let's watch a movie, and drink tiki drinks. So I've done a couple of those. And now actually there's chapters across the country now. There's a Detroit Tiki Golf Club chapter. There's one in Tucson, Arizona, and now there's one in Victoria, BC. And actually this week I'm going to be going down to Tucson because I'm getting together with the Tucson Tiki Golf Club group, and we're all going to hang out and stuff like that. And I'm going to be doing the same thing in like May when I go back east. I'm going to actually go to Detroit. So the Tiki Golf Club became a thing, which really, really makes me happy. And then I decided to my friend Joel, he's a guy with a lot of good ideas, and he's like, you should do like a newsletter.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do a newsletter, but then I was thinking like, well, maybe doing a fanzine would be really, really cool.
Yeah.
And then so I started to do that, and then I have my friend Dave, who's really, really good with like Photoshop and layout and design. And I gave him all my write-ups, and like he put it all together, and like, oh my God, it looks like a magazine. Like it's like that quality. So the Tiki Golf Club has evolved from me just talking about it on YouTube to like actually being a club with chapters and with like meetups and everything like that. And I'm really, really proud of it. And who knows where that's going to go.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you made the sale to me. Unfortunately, I'm not a member yet, but if I
15
could be,
bucks and you can be a member.
hey, I'm gonna hop off this call, and it's gonna be the first thing I do. Can I be an honorary member of the Seattle group, so it gives me another reason outside of just visiting family to go back there? Can I be put
There
as the
isn't,
Seattle group?
well, the funny thing is there isn't really like a Seattle chapter because it's kind of like where it started.
Yeah, it's like the flagship.
Yeah, yeah. So
So, if people wanted to join, where can people do that at?
um,
Like,
yeah,
or
yeah.
even start their own chapters.
Oh, well, I mean, if you want to join, if anyone wants to, like I sell patches, I actually sell tiki mugs and stuff like that. It's just www.tikigolfclub.com. And it's actually part of my blog, which is
Mhm.
tikiwithray.com. Like if you go onto my website, tikiwithray.com, there's a thing that says Tiki Golf Club, and then all the information is there. And then also there is a Facebook group page for the Tiki Golf Club, but it's completely private. And the only way someone can join is if they are an actual member of the club, to the point where I
Okay.
send out the invite to them. There are public groups for the different chapters, and anyone can join those.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I'm kind of the thing that I really loved about and the thing that I kind of love about like how things have gone for me is just like with Tiki, I've been evolving with Tiki too. Tiki with Ray started off as a blog where I would write about it. Then a Tiki with Ray became like my YouTube show, and now I'm making videos about it. And then I started writing for Exotica Modern. So now I write for a magazine. So Tiki with Ray is a column in that magazine.
Mhm.
Now there's the Tiki Golf Club. And another thing that I started too, and that one of my other series is Straight Edge Tiki.
Oh yeah.
And 2 years ago, I quit drinking, um, which I know is kind of crazy being into tiki and stuff like that. But I quit because I'm not an alcoholic or anything like that. It just, as you get older, alcohol just starts to hit you harder. And
Mhm.
it really, really started affecting my sleep. Like I would have problems getting to sleep or staying asleep. God, I mean, like I'd be drinking and I just feel like crap as I was drinking. Like oh my God, I feel like I'm killing myself. Like
Mhm.
any time I would drink, my heart would beat faster, and just I just made a decision to end it, because doing what I do is, for most normal people, like, all right, it's Friday night, they're going out to the tiki bar,
Yeah.
maybe Saturday, and then for the rest of the week, maybe they don't do anything. But like, because my life revolves around tiki, like, it would not be uncommon for me to, like, all right, I'm going to this guy's home tiki bar on Tuesday. I'm going to this person's tiki bar over on Thursday. Friday, I'm going to the Devil's Reef. I'm hanging out with a buddy of mine, and and he has booze, so we're going to drink rum at his place, and I have stuff at my house. Like, I was drinking not every night, but close to it. And what I found out is, like, it's actually better if you just drank on the weekends and then that was it. But when you're drinking like all the time, even if and I wasn't ever getting like drunk or wasted or anything like that, it just all caught up with me. So
Yeah.
so then I started Straight Edge Tiki. Straight Edge is like a movement in like the hardcore and the punk scene,
Yeah.
and the whole thing is like, don't do drugs and don't drink, don't smoke, and all that stuff. And in the early '90s, I was actually in a hardcore band in Pennsylvania, and our band wasn't straight edge, but I was like, God, throughout almost all my 20s, like, I didn't do anything. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until like I actually moved to New York City where I actually started to drink, because it's all bar culture there. Everyone
Yeah.
meets up for drinks after work and stuff like that. And then I just ended up drinking there. And so I thought, like, okay, Straight Edge Tiki. I thought that was like a really cool name for it. And then so like that series is about like my journey being sober, being into tiki, and then, like, non-alcoholic cocktails, talking to other people that are into tiki that don't drink. And it's been a really cool series, because there's been people that reached out to me that they're like, hey, listen, I'm glad you're doing this because I don't drink and I'm into tiki. And it's like, it's cool to see, like, oh, there's things I can do that I can drink that don't have alcohol in it. Or there's a lot of people that don't drink that are into tiki, and they're self-conscious about it. They're like, they feel out of place because, like, okay, I'm not drinking anything. So it's really helped a lot of people out. And even people that, like, that have had, maybe they have a problem with alcohol, maybe they are an alcoholic, where, like, hey, you can still be into tiki and, like, not drink,
Yeah.
and it's proof positive because I'm doing it. And I decided really, really early on that I'm like, I'm not gonna. I like to consider myself to be a genuine person. Like, if you meet me, like, this is me. I'm not putting on a character or anything like that. And I thought it
Yeah.
was really, really important that, like, I'm not gonna create a facade and pretend like, hey, I'm still out there partying it up and everything like that. And I decided to lay things on the line and be like, hey, everyone, I'm still Tiki with Ray. I'm still into Tiki. I still love Tiki, but, like, I just don't drink the alcohol anymore. And so far, everyone's been very, very supportive of that. So,
Mhm. Well, I
so
can say I appreciate you
oh,
for that. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, yeah, no problem. And then here's another thing too. It's just sort of like, I don't want anyone to feel awkward around me or anything like that, and be like, no, drink for me. I
Yeah.
just don't want to do it anymore. And actually, it has made me relook at my interests into tiki. Like, getting back to what I was saying before is, when I first went to hula hula, my favorite thing at tiki is the environment,
Hmm.
the experience, like being in these spaces. And the alcohol is like one part of it.
Yeah.
Like, I love home tiki bars. Like, my favorite thing out of anything tiki is going to, like, home tiki bars. And that's a big part of, like, what my blog became, home tiki bar write-ups. And every time I go to a new one, I always get that feeling of excitement going and be like, oh my God, this is so cool. It's so awesome. And I still feel that way. But now when I'm at someone's bar now, I'm just drinking liquid death now. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, I was about to, I was going to say, I always appreciate when a bar has an amazing non-alcoholic section too, because
Yes.
I've had people over at my home bar either here or back in California, and they're like, I don't drink for whatever reason, and it's like, okay, I almost take that as like an extra challenge to say, don't feel like you need to just sit back and have a water and with that. I'm going to make you a non-alcoholic drink, and like, something that you enjoy, something that is, still, I'm gonna put a, crazy garnish on it. So you're not left out and you're
Yeah.
still part of this. Because I mean, I'm definitely in the camp that, we call them tiki bars, yes, but it's about the art, it's about the music, it's about everything else that it's just that the alcohol element is just one sliver of it. And there's so many different ways to enjoy it. And so I've appreciated, you putting that out there for anybody else who is like, I don't want to give up the tiki world, but for one reason or another, it's just I'm not drinking anymore. So I think
Yeah.
that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And it's kind of, and I think, well, you're younger.
Hmm.
So, but a lot of people that I found being into tiki, a lot of people are in their 40s, their 50s, and their 60s.
Yeah.
And the reality is, I mean, believe me, there's a lot of people that are still, they're older than me and they're still going full throttle. And it's just sort of like, it's gonna catch up with you. You know,
Yeah.
there's gonna be a point where like your body just ain't gonna be able to take it. And there needs to be alternatives. And I'll tell you what, I mean, like I set up a straight edge tiki night at the Devil's Reef. I did it on like my 1 year of sobriety. So I asked Jason Alexander, like, hey, can you come up with like a cocktail or two that are non-alcoholic? You know. Well, he did better than that. He came up with like 8 of them.
Wow.
Wow.
Like what he did is he actually took some of his cocktails they already had and made non-alcoholic versions of them. And they're still on the menu to this day. Like if you go to the Devil's Reef, there's like 8 non-alcoholic drinks that you can order there, and they're great. They're incredible.
Yeah. I think
Um,
we had one when we went, or actually, I don't think you were there the first time. I think Orion, my sister, who was pregnant at the time, she wanted to go with us. I think my brother, my brother-in-law, and her, they came with us, and she ordered one or two. And I remember trying them, and I remember like these are
yeah.
really good. This isn't just a little bit of like splash of orange juice and some sugar syrup served in a glass. Like no, they're very well thought out.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, like down at Holly Paley, like they had a non-alcoholic drink there. It's called the Kiss My Kahui, and it's like even though it was non-alcoholic, it was still like my favorite drink there. It was great.
Yeah,
It was like a non-alcoholic suffering bastard.
yeah,
So, and the cool thing is not only tiki bars, a lot of tiki bars are making a point to like have a non-alcoholic menu, but a lot of other bars I'm seeing here in Seattle like have like a non-alcoholic menu, you know.
yeah.
So it's a movement. There's a movement out there. There's actually a book called Sober Curious where it talks about there's a lot of younger people, like people your age, that are deciding like, you know what, they're not really getting into drinking like like few past generations are. I guess they're realizing there's other ways to have a fun time. You know, so I'm happy for that. So I'm curious to see how that goes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. No, I think I mean I'm interested and correct me if I'm wrong. Have you done a straight edge you've done straight edge tiki articles for Exotica Modern
Yeah.
before, right?
Yeah, I did too, actually.
Okay. I remember reading I mean one of the things I wanted to ask about is kind of what I'm curious as far as your Exotica and Modern involvement, how'd you get involved with that? And then is there any like other future plan for either straight edge tiki or I know in the most recent one there was a write up on you and then one of the articles. So kind of how did you get involved with Exotica Modern and then also what are your plans moving on in the future with it?
It's funny. Ken Holazinski, he's actually from Indiana. He's the guy who started Exotica Modern, and he put a word out on Facebook. Like, hey, I'm thinking about starting a magazine, and if anyone would like to contribute to it, reach out to me. And immediately I'm like, yeah, I of course I want to do that. Of course I want to be part of a magazine. And so I reached out to Ken, and he goes, yeah, I was going to ask you anyway. so,
Yes,
and
a choice.
so so I've been to Indianapolis several times now because there's a very, very large tiki scene going on there.
Hmm.
And like I met Ken on my travels. Like Ken actually has a home tiki bar in his basement, and like I would actually stay with him at his place. So I became friends with the guy. You know, the interesting thing when it comes to like a lot of different tiki get-togethers and like, you know, connections and stuff like that is I end up just becoming friends with people, you know. Um, like I live here in Seattle, but Heather and Ken Pleasant of like Whitco fame, they live up in Cedar Woolley, which is just like an hour and a half north of Seattle.
Mhm.
And I met them at a party, a tiki party, and I hit it off with them, you know. And then like I actually did a blog post on them, and then I actually did a couple episodes with them. Started a series called Whitco with Ray about Whitco, and I'm just friends with them, you know. And that's what kind of what I really love about tiki is like I start building these relationships with these friendships with different people. Like for example, I became good friends with Nick Brink, who's one of the general managers at the Golden Tiki. You know,
Mhm.
I was down there visiting. I was at the Golden Tiki, and I was there in the morning. And he comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, you're Tiki with Ray." I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I like what you do." And then we ended up bullshitting. We just ended up talking, like we hit it off, you know. He's like one of those guys where it's like, "Oh man, I could talk to this guy all day," you know.
Yeah.
And then we were talking about like the shrunken heads and stuff like that, you know. And he was just talking like, "Yeah, you know, we just do it. It's something for fun and stuff like that." And I was just, and he was talking about how like, you know, like he was like saying like, you know, most people are pretty cool. Some more famous people can be kind of like, "Yeah, what's this all about?" And I was just joking around with him like, "Well, if you ever want to do a shrunken head of me, like, I
Yeah.
love that." And he goes, "Well, you never know." So then like literally like a year later, I set up a trip to go down to Las Vegas with some friends of mine. And I reached out to Nick and I'm like, I want to do a video with you about the shrunken heads at the Golden Tiki. He's like, "Yeah, all right, let's do that." And then we do the tour, like we're literally going around, he's showing all the heads. And then at the
Yeah.
end of it, he's like, "And now we're gonna give you a head." And I'm like
Wow.
filming him as he's like telling me like they're doing a shrunken head for me, like a ceremony for me, like right now.
Yeah. You're looking around the room like, me? Are you sure?
I'm
You
like,
know, like
holy
making sure it
shit.
wasn't for somebody else or something.
Well, here's the funny thing is like we were in communication for like a while
Yeah.
and we're talking, and then he kind of mentioned like, you know, "Hey, you might want to send me some headshots of you. You know, a front side, front left and right side." I'll be like,
Yeah.
"Okay." And I honestly thought like when we were videotaping that, I thought like ultimately, okay, I'm down there. And then he's like, "Then we're going to talk about it," where he'd be like, "All right, we're going to do a shrunken head ceremony for you. Let's set up a date for you to come back down." But like he actually already had the head made. So like he had it like hidden in a box like the whole time I was at the Golden Tiki. So here I am filming around the Golden Tiki. There's my head in this box I didn't even realize. And he already had it made. And he's like, and it was like a surprise ceremony for me. And it was awesome because like a lot of my friends from up here were down with me.
Yeah.
So that really meant a lot to me. I guess that meant I was Tiki famous.
Is that the, I was gonna ask at one point, like, is that the mark? Is that like how you know you've made it, like made it in the world of Tiki is like you have a shrunken head somewhere or
Yeah.
yeah,
Cool.
at the
Well, it
Golden
is for
Tiki.
me. You know.
Yeah. That was the goal.
So
Well,
in this
well, go
last
ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
in this latest Exotica Modern, they wrote about you, and in there it said that, you know, you really valued your ability to chronicle other people's stories and be a storyteller. What
Yeah.
has it been like going from writing about other people to now being the subject of the articles and having that shrunken head and feeling a little bit of being on the other side of things?
Well, it's about fucking time. I'm kidding. It's flattering. And so let me talk to you about. So I have my article like every episode issue of Exotica Modern. I have my what I write about.
Mhm.
And then I met a friend of mine who just moved up here. His name is Sean, but he goes by Mr. Monster Go-Go. And he's a blogger. He's a tiki blogger. And I remember I stumbled on like his articles and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, this guy's local because he's like hitting all the spots around here. And I like literally like read his blog and stuff like that. And then I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, I really love your blog. And I would love to have you on my show.
Yeah.
So then I did. And then I became friends with him. And then he starts talking and he's like, he does these, it's called mail art, where like the art is like on the envelope, and then that gets shipped to somebody. But his thing was like he loves horror movies and stuff like that, to the point where like he collects movie posters, and he has like thousands of them, and he has a blog about all his movie posters. And then he has another blog about all this mail art that he makes for people. And I just thought like they were like the coolest things, you know? And I became friends with him. You know, he lives up in Whidbey Island, and I've had him on the show a couple times. And actually behind me, this is actually some of the mail art that he's made with me in it.
Wow.
Oh, really? Wow.
So he's actually taken pictures of like me and like there's like there was like the Tiki Golf Club and the Mystery of the Scorpion Bowl and stuff like that. But these are like he actually cut out pictures of me and put them in these like mail art things.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I couldn't believe like how talented he is, you know. And then I was able to hook him up to be able to start writing for Exotica Modern. And he was talking about, you know, coming with an idea, and he came up with this series called Tiki Famous, or like Almost Tiki Famous, where he'd like interview people in the tiki scene and be more about going in from the angle of like, you know, what's it like to be tiki famous. So he did an article on me.
Yeah.
And that's how that article is. So, you know, I'm friends with him, and like I guess he needed content. So, you know, hey, I guess I'll do a write up on you, I suppose. But still, I'm flattered though. I mean, I'm really, really flattered. And it's like, I think the secret to my success is like, I don't really make anything about me. Like I want it to, I mean, to me, it's all about, hey, here's a blog post on this person. Here's a home tiki bar review on this person's home tiki bar. Even like when I have my on my show, it's like it ain't like I'm being the know-it-all here. It's like no, it's like about the guest, you know. Like I started a series with my good buddy Jason Craig, and he's a really really knowledgeable about rum, and we did a series called Welcome to Rum, and it's awesome because you know he takes the reins with it. Like he's kind of like the main guy of it. Like he's hosting it. Like he's kind of like leading the conversation along, and I'm just comic relief, you know. And it's great because it's like here's my buddy, and it's giving him a platform to like, you know, kind of stretch his wings and be like, you know, hey, here's the things that I know about rum and stuff like that, you know. My friend Tom Hemman, you know, he's almost like he's like a mad scientist, like when it comes to tiki cocktails and stuff like that. And I've done videos with him where he's like dissecting things, and we're taste testing different things with different syrups and everything like that. So it really makes me happy that like I have a platform for like my friends to like kind of show their stuff. Where what I'm doing, it isn't just like, hey, look at me, you know, it's all about me. It's like, no, it's all about all the different people that I have on my shows and on my blog write-ups. So
Awesome.
that really makes me happy, you know. It's all about promoting tiki.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that was one of the reasons why we wanted to talk to you, because I think because you've spent so much time writing stories on other people and really experiencing tiki culture from a documenting perspective, you know, you definitely have a very interesting and unique perspective on the whole scene. So one of the things, kind of the whole, and we talked about this on the phone before we started recording, but kind of the whole idea of our show is that we want to talk about the trends of the kind of the tiki revival. And so we're curious to find out what your perspective is what's next, because there's some people out there that say, you know, we haven't peaked yet, you know, there's still more to come. There's other people who is like, no, it's dead now because of X, Y, and Z, or, you know, other people just say enjoy it. I'm just curious to see where you stand and then what kind of what do you think of either the peak or where do we go from here?
Okay, so let's talk about the eras of Tiki, the waves of Tiki.
Yeah.
So as it stands now, as for everyone knows, there's three waves of Tiki. There's the first wave, which is the Golden Age,
Hmm.
which is like mid-century. When Tiki when it exploded in like in the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s.
Yeah.
The GIs come back from the South Pacific, and now they love Tiki, and people, then Tiki bars grew. Well, they were more like supper clubs back then, like Don the Beachcomber,
Yeah.
Trader Vic. It's more of a restaurant than anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then Tiki kind of died out going into like the late 60s and then into the 70s. And a lot of people, one theory is like, well, Vietnam, people were seeing like tropical stuff going on, and that was the last thing that they wanted to be, was like in a tiki hut. But I honestly think
Yeah.
hippies and disco killed Tiki.
Yeah.
That it was just different things evolved. People got into like new things over time, and Tiki kind of died out.
Yeah.
Then you have the second wave, or the Tiki revival, and that's where you have like guys like Sven Kirsten and Otto and Beach Bum Berry and all these guys that were like exploring and trying to search out Tiki, you know.
Yeah.
And they were the ones that were like going to like Tiki bars that were still around. These are the people that were like going to Goodwill and finding like Don the Beach, like Martin Denny records and
Yeah.
Baxter records. These are the guys that were like, finding old Tiki mugs, at yard sales and stuff like that. And it was, from what I understand, is like the second wave was kind of underground,
Mhm.
It wasn't very big, there was like groups of people,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like a really like a big thing. And then, but the Tiki started to grow though.
Hmm.
And then eventually, unlike a wave that goes up and then comes back down, Tiki went here, and then it went even further, like it got even bigger,
Yeah.
going into like what's considered the third wave. And it's kind of unclear when the second wave ended and when the third wave began. But I like to think that like the third wave started when new Tiki bars started to be built.
Hmm.
New Tiki mug makers started to make Tiki mugs. You have new Tiki carvers, new stuff. And I like to say like say 2006ish, like when Forbidden Island was made, because
Hmm.
it wasn't like the first new Tiki bar to be built, but it was the first new Tiki bar to be built that stuck.
Yeah.
Then
And that's
after
in
that,
Alameda, California, right?
Alameda, yeah, and then it's like after that, now you have like all these other Tiki things. As far as like peak Tiki, I honestly think is probably like around 2017, 2018, kind of like when Martin Kate put out his book,
Yeah.
Smuggler's Code. I love that book because it's a snapshot of like Tiki at that point in time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I honestly think Tiki as we know it, that was probably about as big as it was going to be. And then sadly, we had COVID, which
Hmm.
really kind of changed a lot of things. Um, Definitely, there was a lot of Tiki bars that didn't make it, and I honestly thought Tiki was just going to go underground then. I thought like, okay, you're not going to see too many Tiki bars, like commercial Tiki bars. I honestly, because a lot of people were starting to get into like building their own home Tiki bar, making
Yeah.
their own cocktails at home. And I honestly thought that that's what was going to happen. But then when COVID kind of cleared up, I was pleasantly surprised to see like a whole bunch of other like brand new Tiki bars being built, like a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cool, this is awesome. But one thing that I did notice though is that, like, for example, Mothership opened up in San Diego.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we've
Or
been there a
it's
number
like,
of times.
okay, so you've been there, and it's like, all right, well, it's like a tiki bar, but it's like a spaceship kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or up here in Seattle, we have Inside Passage,
Hmm.
which, from their own admission, they're like, we're not a tiki bar, but it feels like you're like inside a ship. There's a giant octopus hanging from the wall, but it's a tiki bar. It's starting to see like these bars opening up where it's like, well, what else can you? There might not be any tikis in them, but they're making tiki drinks. You know, they're
Mhm.
making, you know, it's a full immersive environment that happens to be tropical. And I think the future of tiki is that it's the evolution of tiki, you know, where it's like, it isn't going to be your classic, you know, thatch, palm trees, you know, tikis, but I think you're going to have a lot of places with what I like to call the tiki template, whether using those ideas to make an environment. For example, is like there's that bar that's in like Galaxy's Edge at like Disney World, like the
Oh
Star Wars
yeah.
ride, and it's like you know it's like the cantina from like Mos Eisley,
Yeah.
but it's like again, there's nothing tiki about it. But you go in there, they have these special tiki, these cocktails. You can buy like a mug to take home stuff. It's like this is essentially like a tiki bar,
Mhm.
and I think that's where we're going. And I like to think that like maybe we're in the fourth wave of tiki now. Or what is the fourth wave? Well, I think that is it. You know, it's where now tiki is evolving into like it's becoming bigger than what it was or what the confinements of that term meant.
Mhm.
Now,
Yeah.
as I was saying, like now you're not starting to see there was like a lot of issues with like say cultural appropriation and stuff like that, where like people like maybe there's some people that were cool with like having actual tikis in the bars and stuff like that. So there's a lot of places that just don't have that,
Mhm.
you know. But and I don't want to say one way or another how I feel about that, but it's like, but it is evolving. So I think I think Tiki is going to expand, but I think it's going to be different than how we know it. So that being said, I honestly think that peak Tiki, its peak was kind of like around when the Smuggler's Book came out, because it's like Tiki as you know it. Here you go, right here.
Well, I think you bring up a lot of interesting points too, especially about how we're going to evolve from this. I think it was Ellie's brother. He recently went to a bar out in Arkansas where he's living, and he sent me it's like it's a tiki bar. He sent me pictures of it, and it looks fantastic. Look, it looks like a very good bar. But even he agreed, it's like, well, the drinks like they are tiki,
Yeah.
they are rum rhapsody, but there's no decor that seems this way.
Yeah,
So and that's what I agree because things like we've had oceanic arts around since the mid 50s, and now within the last 2 years it's gone. And if you weren't able to get stuff out of um
Ocean.
the auction, then you're kind of you
yeah,
know there's still a lot of fantastic artists, but kind of maybe that availability of the tried and true tropical decor is not as available now when you want to do these massive tiki palaces
yeah.
like the Maikai or Max's or other places like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, even just kind of how you were saying, it's like take a place like the Maikai, and it's like they built that place to be the Maikai, you know, with the
Yeah.
A-frame and all that stuff. And back then, you know, you had places like the Kahiki in Ohio and your various Donda Beachcombers across the country, where like the
Yeah.
building looked like a tiki structure. I, but the thing I know is like you said, Max's South Seas, you know, which at this point is like the biggest tiki bar there is besides the Maikai.
Yeah.
But it's in a building though. It's just in like a regular building, you know, that's like in the middle of Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Hmm.
But I do hear that like Bamboo Ben is building something big in Las Vegas where it might actually be like the structure,
Oh wow.
an actual tiki palace, which would be incredible. I would love
Yeah.
that. And if
That'd
there's
be
any
amazing.
place for it to happen, it would be in Las Vegas.
Right.
Yeah.
For a long, long time, and I still say this, is like, you know, like where's tiki heaven? Like where is the place that has the most tiki bars? And that is the Bay Area by far.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like like for a long, long time, I think I counted like 12 or 13 tiki bars just in the Bay Area itself. But then it started to expand, you know. Now there's like Kapu Hut and Wilfred's Lounge and Napa, and then like Tom, you know, Tom's Tiki, you know, like all these places. Like it's still huge, right?
Yeah.
But Las Vegas is starting to like there's some tiki bars starting to pop up there. You know, before it was like just Frankie's.
Yeah.
It was the Golden Tiki, and then like that was it. But now there's like Red Dwarf. Now there's like
Hmm.
Glitter Gulch. There's Stray Pirate, which is again one of those like not a tiki bar, more nautical,
Yeah.
with dogs. But goddamn, I mean, it's a tiki bar, you know.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then there's so I think the next hotbed of tiki is going to be in Las Vegas in Sin City.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's nice to see that, you know.
I think it is definitely interesting. There's a lot of places out there right now. They're probably going to give the Bay Area a run for its money. I know in a couple editions ago of Exotica Modern, they were talking about, I forget the who wrote it, but Florida and the different areas of high concentration of tiki bars too. So I am excited to see, if there is going to be a massive project out there or, bringing, I don't know if we'll ever return back to the mid-century, craze that it was, but at least having these like definitive hotspots of,
Yeah.
reliable half dozen all the way up to a dozen or more, top quality bars.
I think there will be. And in kind of like going with the rise of tiki bars is the rise of like craft cocktail bars
Yeah, absolutely.
or speakeasies. I'm starting to see more and more bars starting to pop up that there's definitely some kind of theme to the place as opposed to it just being like a bar, you know.
Yeah.
So that's really, really exciting. And it's sort of like, again, getting back to COVID, it kind of made a lot of people kind of like, they don't want to go. A lot of people didn't want to go out and go and do things. Why should I pay money to go and find parking to go to some bar with sitting and be in a room with a bunch of randos where I could just drink at home?
Yeah.
Well, you got to give the people something to be like, no, I want to go to that place because that place looks cool. So
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot more attention, to that. Well, it's an exciting time that we're in too, and just like, I mean, like getting back to Tiki, it's like, I'm excited to see where things go. I'm just, I'm just glad that like, that I've been part of the Tiki, the whole Tiki thing in my own way for like the last couple of years. I'm really honored to be part of that, I'm really
Yeah.
honored that like that of all the people that are out there that you thought like, I want to talk to this guy. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we kind of wrap this up?
Any new projects to keep a look out for or anything, any other closing points or anything?
No, no, no. I mean, as I said before, essentially, if people are interested in anything I do, it's like just Google Tiki with Ray, or Tiki Golf Club, and like all that stuff will come up. There's an Instagram page for the Tiki Golf Club. And along with and there's one for like my Tiki with Ray thing. So I'm easy to get a hold of, and I want to let everyone know out there, if anyone's coming up to Seattle, let me know because I'll meet up with you. I'll show you around the city and take you at all the Starbucks locations.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. You get to stay outside of in Pike Place for an hour and a half waiting to go to the first Starbucks when you got the roastery right down the road.
Well, the funny thing is it's not actually like the first one. It's the oldest remaining.
Exactly. I mean, and that is always like when I think it was the first time that I took Ellie up there, that was my like Seattle nerd or like my Northwest, like, no, it's not actually the first Starbucks. It's really this. Like, I feel like, there's a lot of the maybe sarcasm that comes from being, living in Seattle for so long or something like that. It's like, well, it's actually not this.
Yeah.
So I'm used to that.
No. Well, like getting back to what I was saying before, like I moved out here in 2002. Outside of that one year that I lived in Pittsburgh, I mean, like I love Seattle. It's still my home. When I moved here, I felt like I've arrived. I still love the city. I still think it's beautiful. And maybe someday we'll get a good tiki bar here. But for now, we got to deal with hula hula and Inside Passage that doesn't concern us with a tiki bar.
Yeah. Well, at the very least, even if it's not a tiki bar, at least you have rumba.
Yes.
Yeah, I do have rumba, but you know what? I always like to joke around. I always say my favorite tiki bar in Seattle is the Devil's Reef.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if anyone ever comes into town, like, all right, show me the tiki bars. It's like, well, we're going down to Tacoma.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because you have McMenamins, you have Devil's Reef, and oh, geez, there's one more nearby.
There's the Tiki Hut, which is more like a Hawaiian restaurant, but
Yeah.
they kind of tikied it out. Like it's really, really cool. That's down in Tacoma.
Yeah.
Tacoma is actually where the action is. There's a lot of people that have moved down there, and there's a lot of cool places that are popping up. What people have told me is that Tacoma right now is what Seattle was like in the '90s. So, and I
Yeah.
believe it. No, Tacoma's awesome.
This last year when we were up there, we actually spent the majority of our time in Tacoma instead of in Seattle.
Yeah, that says something.
Yeah.
Yeah, we loved it. I mean, you got all the different areas. I know this isn't a pro Tacoma podcast, so if anybody wants, I guess hit us up. If you need recommendations of not even just tiki places, like where do I go in the Northwest? It's like, we'll provide that out, But we hope that we
Yeah.
can get up there soon and hopefully make it to one of the Tiki Goth Club meetups,
That would be so
or at the
fun.
very least, head out to somewhere that you recommend nearby and
No,
take your
seriously.
Starbucks tour that you promised.
Yeah. It's going to take forever, but seriously, if you guys come up, you have to reach out to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have
Well,
to.
thank you again for coming on. We really appreciate it. Again, we'll make sure to have all of your links and everything that you're doing in our show notes. And everyone should be familiar. But in case anybody needs to make sure that they spend the $15 being in the club, we'll make sure that they have access to that.
U.S. funds only.
Yeah,
But yeah, seriously, when you guys got to let me know. And that
definitely.
goes out to anyone who's listening to this. It's like, if you're coming into town, hit me up. I got all the time in the world. I'll meet up with you.
That's
And I
That's
awesome.
awesome.
actually do have a little driving tour that I have, a route that I've created around Seattle. So like I could give you a tour of Seattle
Yeah,
That's
without
that'd
awesome.
be great.
without Starbucks. So
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, thank you
I'll
again.
throw a
And we hope
fish
to
at
talk.
you. Yeah, that's the thing. But yeah, thank you very much for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Welcome. Thank you for
Thank you.
coming.
All right.
Thank you again to Ray Wyland for joining us on our first interview. Now we're going to transition onto the Artist Spotlight for this week's episode. The Artist Spotlight is an opportunity for us to highlight and get to know some people with some awesome creative chops in the tiki space. And that's exactly what this first spotlight is all about. I'm sad to say that I missed out on this conversation with one of the lovely ladies in the tiki world, but Ryley had an opportunity to speak with Stacy McClanahan to talk about her black velvet paintings. Here's their interview.
We definitely appreciate you coming on. We're super excited. Just as a quick introduction, I don't want to be stealing your thunder. Black velvet paintings are your specialty. We're super excited to hear you talk about it. And before we jump into all of that, could you just talk a little bit about introduce yourself and then how did you get yourself into the whole tiki world?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Stacy, and AKA the Fog Den. I started down the tiki path as a kid. My grandparents lived in Hawaii, in Honolulu specifically, and my mom as well. So we had Polynesian pop and things around the house just growing up. So that was kind of my introduction. And my grandparents, when they came back to the mainland after I was born, they would take me to Disneyland, like a lot of people here in California. And so that really made an impression. So kind of just reinforced what we already had going on. Like my grandmother had a giant collection of caftans and they had fabulous cocktail parties. And again, they were living that Polynesian life. So from an early age, it kind of seeped in. And then I started doing art, tiki specific art, probably in like 2016 is when I started doing tiki specific stuff. I have two art degrees. I have a fine art degree and an animation degree, and I worked in the video game industry, and I've always been into art my whole life. Like, started with crayons, worked my way up basically. Velvet specifically, I got into after we actually had a storm hit and a tree smashed into our house and like
Oh, no.
trashed our yard, trashed our house. And it was an excuse to like have to redo a bunch of our property. And so one of the things I always wanted was my own studio because until then I'd just been painting at the kitchen table. And so it's like, that's not really tenable. So built a big shed, turned it into a studio. And I was like, well, I want this to be tiki themed.
Yeah.
And once I built it out, I was like, well, to me, I think of black velvet paintings when I think of tiki bars. And I couldn't find any locally. Here in San Francisco, it's a bit of a desert for finding tiki goodness. There's a lot of tiki bars here, but there's no markets here in the city, none. Um, so I'm like, well, I have a couple art degrees. I'll just
Yeah.
teach myself how to do this. How hard can it be? So that's how I got into doing velvet specifically. Yeah.
Wow. Just out of curiosity, you said you work in the video game industry. Is there anything notable or any big credits out there?
Ugh. A lot of the companies I worked at no longer exist, but they did work on titles that you'd be familiar with. Like I've worked on a Pokemon game, I've worked on an Indiana Jones game, I've worked on if you're into Star Wars, a lot of Star Wars titles, Force Unleashed.
Oh yeah.
I'm in the credits for the sequel. I did some online stuff, and like my claim to fame there was I actually got to design. It was the 30th anniversary, I want to say, of Empire Strikes Back, and I got to design a bunch of both gaming goods for Xbox and PlayStation and those kinds of things that you
Yeah.
could buy that were like Boba Fett themed and Hoth themed, and then I made tangible good designs too. So like one of the things that I made was a Wampa skin rug, and you could actually buy it. So that was one of my designs, and I'm a giant Star Wars fan, so like I can die happy, like
Yeah.
having worked at Lucasfilm. So yes, um,
No, that's awesome.
thank you. Yeah.
So you were saying that you have also a fine arts degree. So you grew up kind of in the shadow of the Polynesian pop, with your grandparents living in Hawaii, being exposed to Disney from a young age. Um, what were you doing before Black Velvet Paintings? Was it more, were you more on like the study side of like kind of the fine art side, or were you actually the one creating all the work? And I'm sorry if that was like an ignorant question because I'm not
No,
sure how the
no,
world of fine
it's
arts works.
No, I mean, and I kind of just all over the place. Like, when my first college was a community college, and I worked while I was going there and working to get my first fine art degree. And ironically, it was in the 90s. I'm dating myself. But I worked at a furniture store and we sold tiki bars
Oh,
at the store
cool.
I worked at. So that was again just like it was kind of meant to be. It was just like I
Yeah.
just
It was
couldn't
following
get
you.
away. Um so so yeah, back then I was doing just all sorts of stuff. Like I was selling the tiki stuff and the rattan furniture, and it was ironically very high-end furniture. It was all
Mhm.
custom, and this was thousands of dollars in the 90s, so I couldn't afford to buy any of the stuff I was
Yeah.
selling. But I did have an appreciation for it. So a lot of the art I was doing was just kind of on the side, like random things. Like I designed tattoos for people.
Oh, cool.
I've illustrated children's books. I still tended to keep my skills on the fine art side. I
Yeah.
prefer pencil and paper and sketching and painting on canvas and that sort of thing to like digital art. But when I went to school for game art and animation, it was a combination of both. So I got my degree doing very traditional studio art. And then my second degree at the gaming school was, designing video game levels and modeling and texture mapping things and rigging and lighting and all of that stuff. And all of the 2D animation skills as well. So I was drawing and, flipping the paper. And one of my
Yeah.
mentors worked for John Krickafalusi, who did Ren and Stimpy.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
one of my teachers worked on Beavis and Butthead. So like there was some really cool, interesting people in the mix at my school, and it was the first school in the world for video games. And I was one of 5 women at the entire school.
Wow.
So I say I feel like I was like Smurfette, like there was not a lot of ladies there. But it was an interesting experience, and that was in Canada actually.
Oh,
And
really? Wow.
yeah, and the people were great. And yeah, I came back. My hometown is in Santa Cruz, and
Mhm.
unfortunately, there wasn't work there. So eventually, I had a friend go, "Hey, Stace, all the jobs are up in San Francisco. Come work at this video game company I work at. It's really cool. We're doing virtual world stuff." And I came up and interviewed and then moved to San Francisco. So I've been there ever since. and bought my first tiki mug. I want to say like 2000, was it 5 or 6? Bought my first tiki mug. So that was like the first like collectible mug that I bought.
Yeah.
I want to say it was like a tiki farm mug, but I'd
Okay.
always loved it. San Francisco has a ton of tiki bars, so of
Yeah.
course I started just hitting all of them whenever I got a chance, and
Yeah.
loved the immersion and all of it, the atmosphere. And so that's when I kind of caught the bug.
Yeah. So it'd been chasing you your whole life. It'd been following
Yeah.
you through, time out in Hawaii and everything. And then 2005, it finally catches you. You start diving in, and then you said 2016 was when you started producing art, the black velvet
Yeah.
paintings. So I'm just curious. So most people who are listening to this should be pretty familiar with how popular black velvet paintings were. And if anyone's not familiar with it, Lee Teg was one of the first big
Went to
ones.
school in San Francisco, by the way.
Really? I didn't know that. Could you just talk about black velvet paintings a little bit, as far as kind of the medium of them, and then how you use that for your own art? And
Yeah,
some of the
yeah, it's a really, I, I used to say I have a love-hate relationship with Black Velvet because it is really tricky and challenging to work on. But I
Mhm.
also, as an artist, I feel like it's really fulfilling and it gives growth to work on different mediums. Like I don't know, I get bored easily. I guess it's ADHD or something. I like to switch things up. And
Yeah,
working on the velvet was really tough because there was nothing, you can't go to school for it, right? Like
yeah,
all of the masters back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s that were working on it, most of them have passed away. They were doing it in a time where there was no social media, there was no YouTube tutorials, right? And
yeah.
so a lot of them didn't document their techniques. Um, so it was a challenge, like figuring out, okay, what do I need to do? Where can I get the material? What paint do I use? All of that stuff. And I got really lucky because when I was really trying to experiment and falling short, I ended up going to the world's only velvet museum, the Velveteria, that was in LA, and it's since closed. But
Wow.
I became friends with the owner. Her name's Karen Anderson, and she literally wrote the book on Black Velvet. You can buy
Mhm.
her book. It's flocked. It's
That's
fantastic.
awesome.
Um, and I asked her, I was like, hey, Karen, I'm going to all these fabric stores. I'm trying to buy velvet. I've spent hundreds of dollars on just fabric, and it's like painting on shag carpet. Like nothing is looking right. Like, what am I doing wrong? And she was like, well, Stacy, you need to work on automotive upholstery fabric. That's why you can't find it at all the fabric stores you're going to, because
Huh.
you're looking at, textile fabrics that you'd use for clothing. So that was like a huge game changer for me. And
Mhm.
then I started using acrylics, and then I switched to oil paints because that's what the people were using, back in the day. And that's what I love doing is portraits for the most part. So
Mhm.
to get realistic or relatively realistic portraits, you really need to be working in oils, in my opinion. So
Mhm.
I switched to those. But it's definitely been a journey, a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, again, I love your artwork. I've seen pictures of it. I
Thank
see what
you.
you post and everything. I love what you're doing. So I'm kind of curious. So you said you worked on a number of very high profile projects at Lucasfilms and video games and everything. What was the jump for into the world of Tiki displaying your Black Velvet arts, or was there a specific event that you started doing, or did you just start doing it on Facebook or wherever you could?
Well, I definitely didn't get here without the help of other people, specifically some amazing women in the industry.
Oh yeah.
Um, Heather Piazza, she was in Oakland. She's now living in Kauai. Yay, Heather.
Oh nice.
She is a gallerist, and she would have tiki themed shows. And so
Wow.
she cut me a break. And the first painting that I displayed at one of her tiki shows, and she was showing with all sorts of great, talented artists. Jeff Granito, Big Toe, all of these people,
Yeah.
Woody Miller, who's a great local artist. Um, they were all there at the show, and she let me bring a velvet painting. And my first one with her was an Elvira that
Oh
I did.
awesome.
Yeah, and that was really fun. And then so that kind of kicked it off. And then the first Tiki event I did was at Forbidden Island.
Hmm.
They do a big parking lot sale, and I kind of joked because you'd have to wait in these long lines as a customer to get in, and I would go to those. And
Yeah.
I go, maybe if I vend here, I won't have to wait in that line. And then I can, meet all these artists and these amazing creators. And
Yeah.
that's what I did. And then the first tiki bar that wasn't a home bar, like the first commercial bar that hung one of my velvets was the Con Tiki in Oakland, which sadly just closed. But
Yeah.
Susan Eggett, who works at Pixar, was the one who tapped me to do that painting for them. And she knows everybody in the tiki scene here in San Francisco. She worked for Martin Kate. Most people know that name now. It's the founder of Smuggler's Cove. A lot of
Hmm.
people got their starts at Forbidden Island too, which is in Alameda here in
Yeah.
California. So those people really helped lift me up. And once I started getting commissions, it just dominoed from there. After that, Bacardi was one of my second commissions. Santa Teresa
Really?
rum, yeah. They had a big rum event at another bar called Last Rites,
Hmm.
which isn't technically tiki. It's more Indiana Jones adventure, but
Yeah.
it's a rad bar, and they do tiki style drinks. They're really good. I recommend everybody go there. The
Yeah.
atmosphere's amazing. It's fantastic. So I did that. That was like a live painting event that I did there. And then they had a raffle and rum tastings, and the winner of the raffle got to take the painting home.
So
Um,
you're doing it at the event as it's going.
yeah,
Oh, really?
which
Wow.
I
How
do
the
not recommend as
I
an
was about to
artist. Like
ask.
a dark tiki bar is not a good place to try to make a painting. I was there with a little clip light,
Yeah.
and to be honest, I mean, I got most of the painting done ahead of time because you have to.
Yeah.
And velvet, what a lot of people don't realize, like part of what's so challenging about velvet is it's a very porous fabric. And if you're using black, all the paint absorbs into it. You
Yeah.
have to let it dry and do layers and layers and layers of paint to have the color pop, right?
Yeah.
So, there would be no way that I could have, started and finished a painting in a dark tiki bar, but I got it mostly done and then did some finishing touches on it at the
Yeah.
event. So it's like it's done.
It's done. Look at this cool thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully whoever got it, definitely they didn't feel like, oh, well, I expected the whole thing to be done tonight. So hopefully they were a good
Yeah.
sport about it at the end of the day.
I did
Great.
finish it. I did finish it
Yeah.
by the end of the event. So it's done. And that's the painting that I made. It was tricky because they had a theme. The rum company said, "Hey, we want you to do something that incorporates all of our mascots." So Bacardi's mascot's a bat.
Hmm.
And then we had Santa Teresa, I want to say is like a horse. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. How do I get a horse that's big and a bat? And Last Rites, their logo is a skull with a cobra.
Hmm.
Um, and this other bar was doing a thing too. That their logo is a crow. And I'm like, this is
Yeah.
a lot going on.
Yeah. You
So
have a
you
whole farm going on at that point.
yeah, it was like the zoo. And so I ended up doing like these animals kind of around a tiki drink that was flaming. And I made the horse coming out of the flames because I'm like, that way I can make it scaled down to go with the smaller critters that are around it. And
Yeah.
I actually have sold that as a print. And I have to stop people go, this is what this means. This is
Yeah.
this, this is this, and this is, you know, but there's a lot of thought that goes into everything I paint too. And I don't think, if you're not an artist, you don't realize like, okay, yeah, I probably spent so many hours painting, but before the painting even happens, I am one of the kind of people that I plan a lot. So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm like, okay, this company, if they don't have a logo, this is the region they're from, and this is the primary animal they have. And so it's like, yeah, one of the rum brands, I ended up doing a macaw for them because they're in a place where there's a lot of macaws around. So yeah, very
Yeah.
very labor intensive, but I'm pretty pleased with how it came out. Yeah.
No, that sounds awesome. I'm definitely gonna have to check that print out, which actually leads me to a big point that I'm sure a lot of people are gonna be asking is where can we find your art, either to view it, if you have a website, if you have a preferred area, where more, where can people buy your art at?
Yeah, there's a couple places. And also I have an event coming up at Trader Vic's.
Oh,
I'm going to
nice.
be teaching a black velvet painting class. We're going to do a Mai Tai paint and sip.
Ooh,
And that's coming up Saturday, May 23rd. And I've done that before for Vic's, and it's really fun because it's like full circle, it's
yeah,
like here we are in a place with all this incredible tiki history and art, and we're making art here.
yeah,
So that's really, really fun. And of course, I have a website. It's The Fog Den, den.com. And I have some stuff on Etsy under The Fog Den. You can find me. I'm on all the socials. Instagram, it's Fog Den SF. And it's because it's very foggy here. And so
hmm,
that's my tiki bar and my studio's name. That's where that comes from. Um, but yeah, I'm on Facebook too, and I will post ahead of time because Trader Vic's, they just post the tickets for the event the day of and it just sells out. So I
yeah,
like to give people a heads up. Like last time we had a waiting list, which is
wow,
great. And so it's really fun. I tell people too, it's choose your own adventure. Like I have a painting that we do and you can follow along, or you can do something of your own choosing and I can coach you with it. So we're probably going to do a tiki, I
oh,
think.
that'll be awesome.
Yeah. So that should be fun. And yeah, I tend to just I'm a mom, I have a young kid, and my
Hmm,
husband is really sweet. He's super supportive, but it's like a lot of work to go sell like paintings at
yeah,
tiki events. So I usually just do a couple a year, and they
okay,
tend to be local. So like this last thing I did was here in the Bay Area. I've got something going on right now. Big Toe in the Tikiyaki, excuse me, Orchestra have an event this weekend. The Exotic of California.
hmm,
I have a painting there. I think they're going to extend it into an art show.
oh, cool,
Um, I have a velvet there, and that the proceeds for that go to the Pasadena Humane Society because they had all the fires down
yeah,
there. Um, and yeah, and then I'm going to be in the Tiki Namicon, so you could see there's going to be some pictures in that really fun Tiki Goth zine of Ray
yeah.
Wyland's. So that's going to be the next issue. So yeah, so those are some places where you can look me up and check out the stuff. And people can email me at thefogden@gmail too, or message me if they have any questions. Like I'm happy to answer them. Yeah.
Well, perfect. No, that sounds great. And definitely, if anyone has not seen your art, I would highly recommend it. It is super cool. And if you need another reason to travel to San Francisco, I think you said May 23rd, right?
May 23rd, it's going to be at Trader Vic's, the home of the Mai Tai,
There you
and
go.
that's in Emeryville, technically, so just on the other side. But if you're going to be in the area, it's such a great tiki pilgrimage. We've
Hmm.
got so many places to check out here: the Tonga Room, Smuggler's Cove, Pagan Idol, you name it. All these great places here in the city. Of course, Last Rites, that's like our neighborhood bar. But yeah, Trader Vic's is so fun. And so yeah,
Yeah.
that's gonna be May 23rd. I'll post more specifics once we have them too. But yeah, it's a really fun time. You don't have to be a crazy skilled artist. Got
Yeah.
all the stuff. And yeah, the last time we did it, we had a great time, and I was just so proud of the class. And a couple Mai Tais help too if you have
Yeah.
some jitters.
Yeah, exactly. Or, it's the same thing if, maybe if I were to attend, I'm not a great painter. So after 2 or 3 Mai Tais, I would say, yeah, that looks good. That looks about right.
Yeah. Well, and I make sure we keep the class size small-ish. Like I won't have more than 24 people because I want to be able to, give people individual attention and make sure they feel confident. And a lot of it really is more about patience and
Yeah.
just working in one spot of the painting, letting that dry, and then working on a different spot while that other spot dries, and then coming back. And it's just a lot of layering.
Yeah.
So hey, everybody, go out, make some black velvet paintings.
There we go. Well, Stacy, thank you so much for your time again. Stacy Ann McClanahan, you check her out on all the social media and everything else. And Yeah, we thank you for your time. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Riley. It's been really fun. And yeah, I hope you guys had fun too.
Definitely. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you again to both of our guests for joining us this week. You can find out more about Ray on his YouTube channel, Tiki with Ray, and at tikiwithray.com. You can check out Stacy's artwork and a link to shop some of her amazing art at thefogden.com. Their websites and socials will be linked down in the show notes, so be sure to check them out. Be sure to join us next time as we conduct another interview with another person that has been super influential in the Tiki revival space. Until next time, I'm Ellie here with Riley, and we have been the Tiki Talk Show. Thanks.